Good evening to you and happy Sunday. It is almost October. Unbelievable, this year has absolutely flown. So I'm coming to you from Sonia's backyard. As you can tell, you can hear the birds behind me. It's a lovely warm evening here in Portland. Getting that last little bit of summer hanging on to it. And I wanted to come to you and talk to you a little bit about something that I myself have been thinking so much about, in fact, reading more about it, to really help guide some important job decisions, life decisions that are coming up for me. And it's a topic that we've talked about briefly before, the difference between self-esteem and self-worth. And why is that important? Why is it important to have an understanding around this when you're making big decisions for yourself in your life? Because really, when it comes right down to it, this is about who you are, not about your self-view in terms of what you do and your value to the world based on things such as your job, your education, etc. Those are very different than your self-worth. So if you look up self-esteem in the dictionary, it basically says that it could be used as a synonym for self-worth, but what I'm talking about is the value that you put on yourself because of what you do. It's a self-conceit. That's different. Self-worth is much more introspective. It's about your value as a human being. It's who you are, not about what you do. It's your inherent value on this planet. So some thoughts around this. Self-esteem different. When you see somebody has very high self-esteem, you mean it as a compliment. Well, they're confident. They have a sense of self and they go forward. But is it the same as having a high self-worth? Not always. You could have a high self-esteem and come across as very confident, but still feel maybe that you're being, there's this imposter syndrome, that it's not quite in alignment with you, that whatever it is that you're feeling very confident about, it doesn't line up on the inside. The confidence doesn't come from within. Perhaps it's a practiced sort of confidence. So just some thoughts about that. And then really the other pieces around it are about this culture that we live in. Two really important things associated with this are about the conversation around scarcity. So here in America particularly, not just scarcity of resources in this capitalist society, but I'm talking about scarcity in the sense of not enough. That we have this conversation going on in our heads about, I'm not this enough. So you fill in the blank. I'm never this enough. We all do it. You could probably give me 5 things in a heartbeat that your little inner critic comes up with as far as what you're not enough of to be of value. I'm not thin enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not tech savvy enough. I'm not blah, 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 right? So inner criticism that we create, yeah? Because we believe there's not enough of ourselves and there's not enough around us to go around. That person over there has more of what we want and need. Scarcity. So that's an important just concept to put around, that we tend to do that to ourselves instead of bolstering from the inside that you are enough. You're already enough. Your inner worth. You as a human being were born with enough. What your karmic destiny is from inside of you. It's what you were born to do. It's when the things that you do light you up from the inside and are easy. You find that passion that just you flow with, whatever that is. That is really about what the self-worth shows up around. The other important concept is around shame. And the shaming is a stigma that we put on ourselves, we tend to put on others, and it really drives down and helps to, I think, make our ability to achieve a feeling of high self-worth challenging. So shame is different than the guilt, when you know you're doing something wrong. Embarrassment, where you did something silly and you can kind of laugh at it. It's not a big deal. You didn't hurt anybody with it. It's just kind of embarrassing. Humiliation, when something is done to you and you know it's not right. Somebody embarrasses you, you maybe have a laugh and you can blow it off. Humiliation's a little deeper, it hurts. But you realize it's not really about who you are. Somebody humiliated you, it's done to you. shame. Shame comes from you. And you started doing that when you were a kid. You started playing this game of, I am not good enough. I am disconnected then from myself. And when you are disconnected then with that sense of self-worth, shame then drives a little extra wedge between you and society and the people around you, the human beings around you. So how do we get back? How do we get back into center? How do we get back to that place as a child where we knew that we mattered and that we were worth love and we were worth being taken care of? Part of it is recognizing all of these concepts, difference between self-esteem and self-worth, this concept of how we shame in this culture of scarcity, but really important is also just a crap ton of self-compassion. Be curious, be open, be alert to what arises, and then be so loving to yourself. Dig in. What is your self-worth? What were you destined to do? What can you do that nobody else can quite the way you do? Lean into this. There's some fantastic books out there and podcasts around this. I particularly love Brené Brown. She does a lot of work around shame and vulnerability. But just meditate on it for yourself. Difference between self-esteem and self-worth. The ability to be self-compassionate and vulnerable, to break down shame, and that you are enough. You are enough. With that, I'm back, and I'm trying to then be back with you every week as I was earlier this year. So I wish you a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Namaste.